Hello, and welcome back to the Home to Self podcast. I am your host, Lily, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm pumped for today's episode because today we are going to be diving into the main theme of this entire podcast, which is called Home to Self. And we're going to talk about what does coming home to yourself actually mean and how do you actually do that, right? Coming home to yourself can mean so many different things to so many people. And if you've been here for a while tuning into the show, then you will know that I ask every guest at the end of the episode what coming home to themselves means to them. And so if you've been following, you've probably heard many different definitions of this phrase. And I love that because it is always up for interpretation, right? Everything in our lives is always up for interpretation. Everything we experience and all the meanings we assign to everything is coming through our own perception. And so I want to give you my understanding and what I mean by it and why I believe that this really encompasses the entire journey that so many of us are on to become a better, healthier, more authentic, more free, more loved version of ourselves, really, right? And so we're going to get right into it. I remember very clearly after about two, maybe three, no, it was definitely two, like 2 years into my spiritual awakening, my journey of self discovery, whatever you want to call it, right? Like I went on this journey where I was really just starting to uncover everything I'm not and relearn who I really am underneath all of the conditioning, underneath all of who I thought I should be, and all the conditioning and societal programming. That awakening began. And about a year and a half to 2 years in, I remember so vividly laying on my yoga mat at night. I had just had this profound realization, and I sat there and I just heard the phrase come back to me and say, "You are coming home to yourself. You are coming home to yourself." Like, that is what this is. That is what's happening here. And it just made me tear up because it was such a profound knowing that that was what was happening, and such a beautiful realization that there was truly nowhere to get to. Like, my whole life, I was always under the impression that there was somewhere to get to, someone to become, something to achieve. And then that was my purpose. That was how I would feel worthy and whole and successful and loved. Right. And in that moment and those moments leading up to it, I just knew so deeply and so profoundly that my home is an internal experience of peace and love and wholeness. And that was what I was coming back to, this like inherent knowing of who I am as a spiritual being having a human experience. And so the way that I love to express in my own definition what coming home to yourself represents is through the analogy of your physical home, right? Whether you're in an apartment or a home, whatever it is, your space that you call home. Hopefully, this space is a place where you feel genuinely safe, right? Safe enough to be yourself, to let your walls down around your heart, to take off your masks and the roles that you wear in your everyday life, right? Your job title, your role as a friend or as a daughter or whatever it is. You can just be for a moment without needing to be anything else. It's a place where you can just authentically express yourself, right? In all of your imperfections, you don't have to put makeup on. You can just be. You can just be free. It's also hopefully a place where you feel inspired, right? This is why we decorate our homes and we make them aesthetically pleasing, and we add some plants and furniture that is beautiful and decor and all these things because we want to be inspired by our homes. We want to go in there and feel lit up and excited and just happy to be there, right? Hopefully your home is also a place that makes you feel loved. It allows you to tap into that expression of love and create from an authentic place and just feel comfortable and nourished and supported, right? All the things that we want from a home. Your real home is your mind, body, and spirit. It is this experience that's happening internally. That is your real home, right? Because your house is going to change many times throughout your life, right? The physical space is going to come and go. The one thing that is consistent, the one place where you can't ever escape is your inner world of thoughts, feelings, beliefs, right? Your mind, body, and spirit. And so it is interesting and ironic how we spend so much of our time, our energy, and our money trying to improve our external realities in order to try and feel safe, loved, secure, worthy, whole, complete, when in reality, everything is happening inside of the home of our own inner world, right? And so if we think about it, most people don't really have all the qualities that we just listed for like this ideal physical home, right? The safety, the love, the belonging, the nurturance, the support, the inspiration. Most people actually have probably the opposite experience within their own inner world. Usually that's one of like high judgment and a critical inner voice. It is living under a lot of anxiety and pressure and fear, self-doubt with almost every move we make, and just stress overall, right? So many people live with chronic stress. Even if it's mild and it has become normal to them, it is still stressful. Like think of a time in your life when you felt so at peace that your body just felt so light, like light as a feather, and you were just so content exactly where you were and just like not worried about anything and just almost like floating in a cloud. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but a few moments I can share that you probably can relate to is like shavasana at the end of a hard yoga class, right? When you're just laying there and your whole body is just relaxed and you just went through a lot of movement and now you're just still and you're just feeling the presence and the peace of being alive. Like there's nothing you're doing, there's nothing you're thinking about. You just are in that moment, right? This is what I would consider the goal of your inner experience. Like, can you imagine always feeling some degree of peace and contentment and joy and love inside of your own mind and body? Like, that would be a completely different world, wouldn't it? That would translate to taking action from a place of creativity instead of reactivity, which I'll get into a second. It would translate to taking more risks in your life. It would translate to radiating more love and joy and authenticity, which in turn means you would attract things that are of like frequency and people are of like frequency back to you. And it would just be this positive feedback loop because you would already be so content and satisfied that you would then just create because of the sake of creation and inspiration and not from this place of like, I need to, I have to, I must, right? This like desperate, fear-based, reactive mode that so many people live in. So you can already get a sense of why it is so important to create a harmonious internal environment for yourself because you are at the center of your own universe, right? The world that you are experiencing around you, the opportunities you see, the people, your job, literally every interaction and situation that you encounter in your life is a reflection of how you feel about yourself on the inside and the programs you're operating from at a subconscious level. And that can be a really difficult pill to swallow. And I don't want you to feel any sort of shame or guilt about that if the reality you're experiencing isn't your ideal life. For most people, it's not because we're here to work through that, right? We're here to continue to evolve and become a more true and authentic version of ourselves. And in turn, our lives will continue to get better. But it's only through learning, honestly, the hard way that we start to wake up to these things. And so, but it is so liberating to realize that because if you choose to see it as like, whoa, I have so much more influence and control than I once thought, then that makes you powerful because now the power is back in your hands as opposed to being out there where you're just at the mercy of life. Nothing happens for a reason. You're just along for the ride and there's nothing you can do or say about it. That is victimhood, right? And that is complete powerlessness. We don't have control over anything else in our lives. And so it's so much more empowering to recognize, oh, I do play a role here. I am a co-creator of this life, and my internal state of being is what influences the reality that I'm experiencing. And so, again, going back to how most people live, most people, especially women, are battling themselves on the inside every single day. And it has become so normal that we just don't even think twice about it, right? This constant inner critic, this self-judgment, this self-doubt, this overanalyzing, this constant stress. It's just kind of how we live. And I know that so well because that was my story for so long. And I'm not perfect. This is a forever journey. So it's not to say that you just like do a little bit of work and then you're there. No, it's a constant evolution. This is the whole point. It's like, if you've ever heard Ram Dass, the spiritual teachers, say the quote of like dying is like taking off a tight shoe. It's the same idea, is like, we are in this human experience, and the human by default has these limitations, these subconscious beliefs, this conditioning that causes us to perceive ourselves as if we were inadequate, as if there's something wrong with us, as if we're not enough to some degree. And so that's constantly through this lifetime what we're going to be working on, to continuously come back to who we really are and live from a place of truth and love instead of fear. So it is progress over perfection. However, what I can say from experience and through working with so many different clients is that it is such a different world when you are living from a place of truth and authenticity and self-acceptance versus constantly battling yourself. And the battle for most people that I work with looks something like this. It's kind of two sides of the same coin, but one is that we are just constantly victims of our own minds, right? All of the limiting beliefs that we think we're not enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not successful enough, we're not lovable, there's something wrong with us, we're not safe, whatever those subconscious constraints are, we just fall prey to them and we live our lives as if that were true, which leads to such a disempowering life. It leads to us playing small. It leads to us not taking risks. It leads to us just staying stagnant and our hearts constantly yearning for more, but our minds operating under so much fear and control that we just believe all of these false narratives that we've adopted in childhood. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that we're then constantly trying to prove that voice wrong, right? So this is the constant like striving for more and over giving and people pleasing and just like this, like I call it like, it used to be like Lilly plus, right? Like I was showing up as authentically as I could, but always giving more, just a little bit more, because I'm trying to prove my worth. I'm trying to prove my worthiness in this life. And that is also exhausting. Both of those scenarios are so exhausting. We may flip flop back and forth and have both of these, but both of those are so exhausting because they are denying your true nature. Right? And it creates this internal state of stress, which is the opposite of what we want in order to experience peace and harmony and therefore create from inspiration and creativity. On top of that, this constant internal battle where we are fighting ourselves, where we are questioning ourselves, where we are doubting ourselves, where we are criticizing ourselves. This constant internal battle creates stress, like we talked about. And over time, this stress starts to accumulate. And that is what causes disease after many, many, many years, right? Because the body is not meant to be in a constant state of stress. It's just too much. We're supposed to be able to jump in and out of stressful states, being able to tap into our fight or flight when we truly have something to run away from, when we need that adrenaline and cortisol in order to perform and jump out of the way, or handle something in quick time or something like that, which is a great thing to be able to tap into. But when we're constantly in a state of stress, when that is our everyday experience, not even so much because of our circumstances, but more so because of how we're perceiving them, right? That is where we create overdue stress that over time starts to wear and tear on our bodies and our minds. So as mental health comes in, physical health issues, all these other problems. And so we don't want this, right? No one wants this. And if you're already aware that you've been living in a state of internal disharmony, we're going to talk about how to start moving out of that. We're going to talk about what you can start doing and what it looks like to actually live in a state of ease, right? And so before we get to that part, I just want to mention one more part, which is that as humans, I believe one of the greatest human dilemmas is this illusion that the mind thinks that our happiness lives somewhere in the future. That when we get somewhere, then we will rest, then we will, find peace, and then we will be loved and experience harmony and all these things that we desire. And that is kind of the illusion that we live under. That's why we're like working really hard and putting in the extra time and sacrificing our health and whatnot, because we're trying to get somewhere so that we can finally feel at ease. And this is the ultimate dilemma, because I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I'm sure you have. But if you think back in your life to a time when you thought that getting X thing would finally give you the feelings you were after, I'll give you a personal example. For me, I can remember so distinctly when I was at the peak of my health struggles physically that I thought, when I lose this extra weight and when my skin clears up, I will finally be happy and I will finally love myself and things will just be so much better. And then I achieved those goals. And for a little bit, I did feel better, right? I felt more ease, more joy. It was easier to love myself in times. However, it was so short lived because without even knowing it, my mind then found the next thing to cling on, to think that I need the next thing in order to be happy, right? The goalpost just moved, which is what happens. That's what our minds naturally do. They're never fully satisfied with anything that we achieve and any validation we get, no matter how good it is, because, and this is the part that I want you to hear, because you can never fill an internal void with something external. Meaning, because it's an inside job, because happiness can never come from anything outside of yourself, nothing you do in the external realm will ever fully satisfy what you're looking for internally. And we can continue to try and chase that. Some of us have to learn the hard way, and that's just the way it is. But you can save yourself so much struggle and so much suffering if you really, truly let that sink in and live your life knowing that the truth is that happiness and joy and love and fulfillment and freedom are an inside job. And that does not mean that you can't want things or that you can't strive for a better physique or a higher paying job or a more loving relationship. Of course, that is the point of being human and getting to be in this human experience, is the fact that we get to create and, constantly improve and tap into greater potential. That is all part of it. However, the underlying intention is what makes all the difference. Because again, like I talked about earlier, there's a creative way to live your life and there's a reactive way to live your life. And it's subtle, but it makes all the difference. When we are living from a reactive place, we are usually trying to get away from something, right? In my case, back in the day, I didn't want to feel the unworthiness that I thought was because of how I looked. And therefore, I was doing everything in my power to get somewhere else. Do you see how that's a reactive state, to reacting to what I don't want? Versus If in that moment I could have listened to this conversation and really tuned into the peace that I already am, that I feel at certain times, like in Shavasana or after a deep meditation or when I'm just in my joy, and I can tap into this experience that's happening internally and recognize that I can create that because I am the source of it, then I would recognize I don't actually need all of those things externally, but I would love to have them because I can. Then it becomes a creative pursuit instead of a reactive one. And again, that makes all of the difference. And how I want to explain this a little bit further for you is the irony here, right? Of thinking that when we get somewhere or when we achieve something, then we can feel the feelings that we're after is so ironic, because what is essentially happening is that you are in a state of sacrifice and suffering and stress, thinking that that will result in a state of happiness and ease and calm and peace in the future. But that is not how we work, because our energy is always creating what we attract back to us, right? Life is a mirror. And so you can't create happiness and joy and fulfillment from a place of stress and suffering. Those are two polar opposite frequencies. So really the goal is recognizing that in order to build a happier tomorrow, it's about learning how to be happy now, in this present moment, which is the only moment that actually exists. Of course, this is all easier said than done. It is a practice. However, I hope that this is starting to really awaken something inside of you and recognize that you are so much more powerful when you redirect your focus inwards. So let's talk about how and what it looks like to actually come home to yourself, to actually put all of this knowledge into action and practice. The goal is not right away to just love yourself fully, right? And to just from one step to another be in this like enlightened state where you just know that you are perfect and whole and complete exactly as you are. I mean, not saying that that's impossible, but for the most part, there is a spectrum here, right? And there's a process and there's just steps in between that. I would say that first and foremost, the most important part of all of it is profound self-acceptance. Before you reach love, which is the highest frequency, it's like, can we just reach a place of self-acceptance? So rather than battling ourselves and fighting ourselves and criticizing ourselves and judging ourselves, can we start to shift to a level of deep, profound self-acceptance? And this is despite your circumstances, not because of your circumstances, right? Again, very subtle, but very profound. It's easy to accept yourself and love yourself when everything's going right. But can we also accept ourselves when we are insecure, when we are feeling doubtful, when we are feeling unworthy? It seems counterintuitive, but it's actually not when you understand how this stuff works. Whatever we resist persists, right? We've heard that before. And so it makes sense that when these insecure parts come up, which by the way, we all have, because we are all human and we all have our doubts and our worries and our imperfections and our hurtful experiences from the past that we're trying to prevent, right? And so when they naturally come up, which they will, the key here to reaching a level of deep self-acceptance and creating a sense of home and worthiness inside of you is recognizing that all parts have a place inside of you. Because when you realize that all of these parts, all of these insecurities, all of these patterns that you so desperately try to hide and run away from and suppress and change and fix, all of those, when you really, 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 really get to the root of them, they are just a hurt and scared little kid that is still living within you. So can you imagine your daughter coming up to you, or someone you really love, a young child coming up to you and being like, I am so scared that the kids at school aren't going to like me because of this pimple or because my hair doesn't look pretty or something like that. You would never try to fix her or push her away or try to hide her from the world. Like, can you imagine how toxic that relationship would be and how much more intense her fear would get and how much more she would feel self-conscious? That is what's happening inside of us when these parts come up. Problem is that they're very good at disguising themselves in sneaky ways so that it doesn't look like it's a scared or hurt little child. But it is. When you really connect profoundly to your inner child within and reparent that child by loving and accepting it exactly the way it is, what happens, ironically, and the analogy I want to give here is that same child, if instead you were to take it into your arms and rock it and say you are loved even if your hair is shorter than you'd like it to be. I love you exactly the way you are. You are worthy exactly how you look and how you are, just for being you. And you just safely rocked that baby and that child in your arms until she calmed down. That fear would naturally dissipate. And that is the same kind of acceptance that you get to learn to give yourself. And so again, the irony is that by pushing it away, you actually make it louder. You perpetuate it because you are communicating that if there is something to fix, then that means that there is a problem in the first place. But there is no problem. The only problem is that your mind thinks that it shouldn't be the way that it is. Your mind thinks and has created a story that because of how you look, you're not going to be loved. Then you have a problem. And the problem is that thought, that belief. It's not the pimple in and of itself. Because imagine if you walked around, like let's say this was the adult version of you in that same situation where you had a haircut you weren't loving and you had breakouts on your face and you were feeling insecure about it. If you decided to shift your thoughts, or if you never even had the thought that that was related to you being unlovable, like if that wasn't even a belief of yours, you were just like, okay, I just have breakouts and I just have this haircut. Like it just is what it is. It doesn't mean anything. And you just went to class or went to your job feeling so confident and just not even thinking twice about it, and you were still radiating love and smiling and like hugging people and doing your job, like no one would think twice about your haircut or the pimple on your face. You know what I mean? So it really doesn't have to do about that. And that's how we can recognize, oh, it's about the belief. Because when I think that this makes me unworthy, then I around small, my shoulders hunched over, my voice lower, and I act like I'm not worthy because that's what I'm believing because of how I look. But it's all a narrative. So the problem isn't the thing itself, it is our perspective. And for the same reason, we can then shift our perspective and recognize that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with us. We are human, we are imperfect, but our insecurities don't make us less worthy. And when we start seeing ourselves through that lens, it becomes a lot easier to bring in, metaphorically and physically, these parts of yourself and love them exactly as they are, or at least accept them exactly as they are. When you do that, when you recognize that you are both a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time, because you are both a divine spirit and a human, that is when you start to shift the energy and the experience in your mind and body. Like, I want you to even feel in your body right now as I just give this example of bringing this smaller part into your arms and holding it and loving yourself through it and telling yourself even the unworthiness is allowed to be here. I love you even if you're feeling unworthy. How do you feel in your body right now? Because for me, that makes me feel so much more relief than thinking that there's something wrong with me or that there's something I need to fix or that there's something I need to do or I need to try harder or I need to, whatever it is. That just leads to automatic tension. I just contract my muscles or ugh. Versus the other example that I just I soften a little bit. I take a deeper breath. I often hear the first body language response that I see in clients when we get to this part is a sigh. That is the body's way of showing that you are shifting out of stress and into a state of ease, which is exactly what we want. Your inner landscape is going to be so much more enjoyable when it feels like relief, like acceptance, like ease, and just the utmost unconditional love and support. All of the qualities that we search for in a relationship are the qualities that we are seeking inside of ourselves, within our own relationship to ourselves and all of these parts. Think about how deeply you desire someone who will love you exactly as you are. Someone who you can jump into their arms when you are crying and feeling like crap, and they just look at you and say, I love you exactly as you are. You are so beautiful, even when you're feeling so unworthy. That's the kind of love that we all dream of, whether it's in a parent or a best friend or a partner. This is why animals are it's because they exude unconditional love. No matter what you do, when you come home, your dog is so excited to see you. It does not matter at all how you're dressed, what you say, what you did or didn't achieve that day, nothing. That dog is so excited to see you. That dog loves you no matter what. Even if you yell at it, even if you punish it, even if you accidentally unleash on your dog sometimes because we're human and we're imperfect, that dog still loves you. And that's what we can learn from our animals and from the people in our lives that love us unconditionally, and from both nature and life itself. Nature continues to hold you and continues to supply us everything we need in order to live. The air, the water, the nourishment, no matter what we do to her. Life, or whether you want to call it God or the universe or source, same thing. The more that you start to believe that, the more that you start to see it. How every time you thought you weren't going to make it, somehow life showed up. God showed up. And here you are. And so I want you to really reflect on how it feels to be unconditionally loved. And use that as reference for what you can do for yourself. The type of energy you can show up for yourself. That is the goal. That is what it's like to feel at home in yourself. It is not a result of you becoming this perfect version of yourself. It is the result of you coming home and learning how to love all of you and accept all of you exactly as you are. It is becoming your own support system. That safe space in your physical home, what that looks like and translates to when we talk about coming home to yourself, is having an internal safe space and an internal voice of encouragement and validation that we can collapse into when there's parts of us that feel so scared and so unworthy. That is true safety, because no one can take that away from you. Safety is not your salary job. As much as the mind thinks it is, that job can be taken from you at any moment. That partner can leave whenever they're done or whenever the relationship's over, right? Even your physical home can be taken away, or whatever it is. Anything outside of you is not yours. But what is yours is your own inner world. Your ability to really hold yourself through the hardest moments with acceptance and love and encouragement. That is true safety. That is true security. And that is true power, because it's coming from within you, which is the only place it can ever really come from. So imagine living a life from this place. Imagine how much more courage you would have to go after your dreams. You would be so much more confident in saying yes to opportunities that scare you a little bit, but also excite you. Because you know that no matter what, you've got you. You can handle it. You know how to show up for the anxious voice. You know how to show up for the scared parts. You know how to show up for the anxious attachment version of you. Whatever it is, right? That is true empowerment, where you're not relying on anything outside of you. You're not relying on a coach or a teacher or a parent or a sibling or a partner. You're relying on you. And it's you and you in this life forever. And this doesn't mean that you can simultaneously not have external support systems. Absolutely. I'm all for that, obviously. This is the space I work in. I'm a coach. I'm here to be your cheerleader in your safe space as well. But likewise, at the same time, it's about cultivating that within yourself. Because you'll never be fully satisfied. It'll never feel fully safe and fully safe if it's not coming also from within you. And so imagine your life, if you had this internal sense of safety and love within you, where even when you got lost in the thoughts, which you will, life will still come with its challenges where you completely fall back into old patterns and negative thinking and criticism and judgment. However, you don't stay there nearly as long as before, and it's not nearly as intense. The more you practice this, the more you implement the tools, the somatic practices, and the love of coming back to yourself and physically and literally and metaphorically holding yourself and those parts so that they can come back to a place of safety and ease, and you can reconnect to your truth and your authenticity and your love and your power. That's a completely different world. And that is what I desire for everyone here. That is why I started this podcast. That is why I do what I do in the coaching space. And that is the journey I'm on every single day. And I've come so far. Oh my gosh, you guys, I used to be the complete opposite of this. I had no strong sense of self. I didn't even really know who I was. I did not love myself. I was just constantly chasing validation and approval from other people. But now, even though I'm not perfect at it either, I feel so much more grounded and confident Not because I have everything that I want in my life externally, but I have everything I need because I know that what I need is love, is support from myself and others, and is just this profound sense of acceptance. And so that's what I desire for everyone. And what's really exciting is that I've created a program that takes you on this exact journey. And it's called Home. And I am officially launching it in February, end of February 2025. And the process will take you exactly through all these parts of you, your mind, your body, and your spirit, in a holistic way, so that you know exactly how to show up for yourself in the ways that I've just explained. It's a process of unlearning who you are not, right? By removing the limiting beliefs and all these distorted perceptions that are clouding your truth, and then relearning who you are. What brings you joy? What brings you pleasure? Reconnecting to your intuition and really starting to trust your heart over your head. It is no longer abandoning yourself in pursuit of external validation. And through that process, you start to build lived proof that your intuition is worth trusting. And so the way it's going to work is that we're going to work through each of these categories. Like I said, mind, body, and spirit. Mind, we're going to work through the limiting beliefs and the how to actually work through the anxious thoughts and the limiting beliefs that come up that often stop us from doing what we want, right? From becoming the people we want to be, from making us feel stuck and stagnant in our lives. And we're going to create some separation from that voice and understand how to work with it instead of either falling prey to it or fighting it. There's a different way that is much more harmonious. And this skill is priceless because your mind is always there. It's always going to try and protect you by thinking of the worst case scenario and by, remembering all the things that have happened to you. And so it's really learning how to work with the mind instead of fighting against it. And then it loses its power, its grip over you because you understand what it is, how it works, and how to work with it in times of need. Then we're going to look at the body. We're going to look at how to process your emotions in a healthy way so that they don't get suppressed in your body and over time cause disease. Right? So many of us are so lost when it comes to our emotions, and we have such big emotions, which is actually such a beautiful thing. Especially as women, we're so empathetic. We feel so much, but it can be overwhelming when you've never been taught how to work through your emotions in a healthy way. And this is why we end up coping and seeking relief through substances, through alcohol, through food, through social media, through TV. Right? There's so many coping mechanisms that we have adopted to just try and find some relief. But you won't need those, and you won't need all the strategies to try and force yourself to get better habits, because they'll naturally fall away when you have tended to the need that lives at a deeper level. And within that is also your inner child, like we talked about. Your emotions and your inner child are deeply connected. So I'm going to teach you how to reparent your inner child, and we're going to go through a beautiful experience where you get to deeply reconnect with that little you within you and know exactly how to show up for her so that whenever it happens, whenever you get triggered in life, which is going to happen, you know how to deal with it. You know how to learn from those triggers. You know how to show up for yourself. And again, that's the most empowering feeling, because then you don't hold back in life and play small because you're too afraid to get triggered. And instead you dive right into it and create a beautiful life for yourself, knowing that you've got you. You can handle it. And then we're going to work through your spiritual self. We're going to reconnect to you, who you really, really, really are, underneath everything you've been taught about who you should be. You're going to learn the process of self-discovery at a deeper level than you ever have. You're going to start prioritizing your joy, your truth, your pleasure. And most of all, you're going to reconnect to your intuition and start to take action from your heart over your head. And little by little, you build self-trust. Self-trust is not built just by thinking about it. Self-trust is a process, the same way you build trust with another person, by them little by little proving that they're continuing showing up in the same way, that they're consistent, that they love you no matter what, right? That they are true to their word. When you start to implement those qualities with your relationship to yourself, that's how you build self-trust again. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this program called Home. And we get to do it together in community, in sisterhood. First round is the beta round, which means it comes at a massive discount. It is seriously such a crazy good rate for this 3-month program. And we get to do it together in a group of like-minded women. It's a 3-month container. We start at the end of February. And the best part that I'm so excited about is that we are going to have our own community platform to really build deeper connections aside from just the calls. So this platform is similar to like a Facebook group, but much more intentional and much more exciting. And all of the videos will be hosted on there. And there'll be extra bonus learnings in there, and there'll be a space for you to share and connect with each other and really create community, which is, as you know, if you've been listening to any of my work for some time now, like community is such a big part of this piece. Because the same way that you can't see yourself unless you look in the mirror, we also need people who can reflect back to us what they see. Right? Both where we're getting caught up in false narratives about ourselves and also our beauty that sometimes we just can't see. It is so much more powerful to do it alongside other women, and it is so inspiring to be in these containers. Everything is live taught, which I'm really excited about. So there's no pre-recorded content. I feel like a lot of pre-recorded content that I've signed up for, I never actually finish watching because just don't find the time for it. And so instead, I wanted to be an intuitive co-creation where your energy is helping me and my energy is co-creating with you. And we build this beautiful experience together. And so I'm going to be teaching live on our calls. We have 1 call per week for three months, so 12 weeks. And they're going to be a mixture of educational calls and also experiential calls. So I'm going to take you through healing experiences, visualizations, meditations, somatic practices, so that you can really implement these concepts and take them away and know how to use them in your everyday life. Because it is through practice that we reprogram our subconscious. Practice and repetition. So, if you are curious to hear more, if you want to join us for this beta launch and therefore get the program at a massively discounted rate, I will leave the link in the show notes below. So all you have to do is click the link. You'll see all the details for the program as well as the next step for how to apply. And I really, really hope that if this feels expansive in your body, that you trust it. That is your first assignment. Right? Everything we've been talking about has been about moving from the head and the fears down to the heart, down to love. And your body knows when it expands initially and it feels exciting, trust that feeling. You have nothing to lose. Even if you're just curious to hear a little bit more, I'd love to chat with you. This is going to be your guidebook for how to thrive as a human being. Because we never received a user's manual for this human body and this mind. We were never taught any of this in school, which is mind-boggling, and that's a whole conversation for another time. But you can consider this course your user's manual, personalized to you and how to live a good life, a peaceful life, an authentic life, a healthy life, a connected life. And you'll realize that the more that you come home to yourself, the more that the life around you feels like home. You begin to attract aligned relationships and beautiful opportunities. Everything starts to fall into place with so much more ease because you are radiating. And that is your power as a woman. Your life force energy is literally your power. It's your magnetism. And that can't come when you are constantly at war with yourself. That comes when you accept yourself exactly as you are. And then you tap into your greatest power, which is just radiating love. Because when you can love and accept yourself, you can so much easier love and accept other people. And that is a person that everyone wants to be around. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me for this beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful and I'm so deeply honored to guide you through the home program if it feels aligned for you. This feels like such a long time coming, and truly all the knowledge that I've accumulated through my own experience and working with clients. And it's going to be so different than your regular group program because it's going to be an experience that leaves you feeling so open. My motto or my abbreviation for home is heart open, mind at ease. That's how you're going to feel. And that might just change your whole life, as it did for me. All right. Again, go to the show notes below, or you can DM me on Instagram if you have any questions. I'm at Lilly M. Terry. That's also linked below. And I can't wait to hear from you. I love you so much.